It is a certainty that the Egyptian legend of the creation from which Moses wrote the biblical account came from India when the Na'akals went to Egypt as missionaries to teach the 7 sacred inspired writings, religion and sciences. Therefore, the dramatic story that is taught in Sunday schools throughout the Christian world today originated in the lost continent of Mu, according to the author. Okay, so it's sort of like saying, they came from, it's indicating they all came from this lost continent Mu, which got destroyed, engulfed by fire and sank. And then these Na'akal survivors went on to India, and then they went down to Egypt and taught them lots of things there. Which is dropping a hint to us that supposedly they went to Egypt and taught them all their knowledge. Coming from India. The lost continent. The record of the destruction of Mu, the motherland of man, is a strange one indeed. From it we learn how the mystery of the white races in the South Sea Islands may be solved, and how a great civilization flourished in mid-Pacific and then was completely obliterated in almost a single night. A few decades ago, scientists would have been very doubtful about the possibility of the former existence in the Pacific Ocean of a huge continent such as Mu. But since then, records have come to light and comparisons have been made which prove that such a land did at one time exist. The proofs are of several types, and yet the latter peers were debunking him. Says, no, this guy's dreaming. Pseudoscience and all this sort of stuff. It doesn't match. All this sort of stuff. First, as the author had already explained in the opening chapters, there are the sacred tablets found in an Indian temple and deciphered with the aid of a learned priest. These tablets gave the author the first hint about Mu and sent him on a worldwide search. They had been written by the Na'akals, either in Burma or in the Motherland. They told how the Na'akals had originally come from the Motherland, the land in the centre of the Pacific. They also told the story of the creation of man and his advent in this land. Records of later day written in Mayaks, maybe that's the language of the Mayans, not really sure. Egypt and India tell and describe the destruction of this land of Mu when the earth's crust was broken up by earthquakes and it sank into a fiery abyss. Then the waters of the Pacific rolled in over her, leaving only water where a mighty civilization had existed. So you see a lot of those videos on YouTube and that there's this unknown structures under the water, etc., etc. Could they be them? Which would verify that, there was some sort of continent, Mu or whatever, under the ocean that was there thousands and thousands or millions and millions of years ago. Second, there is confirmation of Mu in other ancient manuscripts, including such a classic as the Hindu epic Ramayana, written by the sage and historian Valmiki from the dictation of Narana, the high priest of the Rishi temple at Ayodhya, who read the ancient temple records to him. In one place, Valmiki mentions the Na'akals as coming to Burma from the land of their birth in the east, that is, in the direction of the Pacific Ocean. Other documents confirming the story of the sacred tablet and Valmiki are the Chuano manuscript, now in the British Museum. This is an ancient Maya book written in Yucatan. It speaks of the land of Mu, using the same symbols for Mu that we find in India, Burma and Egypt. Another reference is the Codex Cortesianus, a Maya book of about the same age as the Troano manuscript. Then there's the Hassa record, with hundreds of others from Egypt, Greece, Central America, Mexico and the cliff writings in our western states. Third, there are existing ruins which, by the location and symbols with which they are decorated, tell of the lost continent of Mu, the motherland of man. So there's a few of these books where they say, nobody knows what this book's about. It's got all these pictures in it, these flowers, whatever, etc., etc. Could it be that lost book? Yeah? Preserved, and they don't know, because they can't relate it to anything else. They just don't know what it's all really about. They can't translate it and all that sort of stuff, decipher it, whatever. So maybe it's one of these books from that Mu. Third, there are existing ruins by their location and symbols with which they are decorated tell of the lost continent of Mu, the motherland of man. On some of the South Sea islands, notably Easter Mangaya, Tongatabu, Panapa, and the Ladrone or Mariana Islands, there stands today remains of old stone temples and lithic remains which take us back to the time of Mu, according to this author. As Uxmal in Yucatan, a ruined temple bears inscriptions commemorative of the lands of the West, whence we came, and the striking Mexican pyramid, southwest of Mexico City, according to its inscriptions, was raised as a monument to the destruction of these same lands of the West. Fourth, there is the universality of certain old symbol and customs as discovered in Egypt, Burma, India, Japan, China, South Sea Islands, Central America, South America, and some of the North American Indian tribes and other seats of ancient civilizations. These symbols and customs are so identical as to make it certain that they came from one source, only Mu. With this background, then we can follow the tale of the destruction of Mu. And the author states here, they found that this continent was a vast stretch of rolling country, extending from north of Hawaii down towards the south. A line between Easter Island and the Fijis formed its southern boundary. It was over 5,000 miles from east to west and over 3,000 miles from north to south. The continent consisted of 3 areas of land divided from each other by narrow channels or seas. The author, basing his descriptions on records shown in chapters 4 and 5, would try to picture her as she was. Far back into very remote times, many, many thousands of years ago, and yet on the very edge of what we call historical times, there was a great continent in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where now we find only water and the sky, and groups of small islands which are today called the South Sea Islands. It was a beautiful tropical country with vast plains. The valleys and plains were covered with rich grazing, grasses and tilled fields, while the low rolling hill lands were shaded by luxurious growth, etc., etc. So could you look at the book of Jeremiah and what's the other one? I'm not too sure if it's Zechariah. One of the ones that Jordan Maxwell said, that Jeremiah and the other one had visions. God showed them a vision of what the earth looked like before the tohu and vohu and all that sort of stuff. Before, for some reason, it was a disaster. They did something wrong, so they all wiped out. It was a beautiful, lush land with happy people, great civilization, etc., etc. And then for some reason, they just suddenly got wiped out. They must have done something to anger the gods, according to this Jordan Maxwell guy, right? Okay, so there's more information there. It's quite interesting. Okay, and it's saying about Ra, the son of Egypt, etc. It was thoroughly taught and understood that Ra Mu was not to be worshipped as he was only representative. At this time, the people of Mu were very highly civilized, etc., etc. Okay, so this is quite interesting. And here it says the dominant race in the land of Mu was a white race, exceedingly handsome people with clear white or olive skins, large, soft, dark eyes, and straight black hair. Besides this white race, there were people of other races, people with yellow, brown, or black skins. They, however, did not dominate. These ancient people of Mu were great navigators and sailors who took their ships all over the world, from the eastern to the western oceans and from the northern to the southern seas. They were also learned architects, building great temples and palaces of stone. They carved and set up great monoliths and stone as monuments. In the land of Mu there were 7 great or principal cities, the seats of religion, science and learning. There were many other large cities, towns and villages scattered throughout the 3 lands. And they were all built near rivers, etc. While thus this great land was at its zenith, while it was the centre of the earth's civilization, learning, trade and commerce, and while great stone temples were being erected and huge statues and monoliths were being set up. The land of Mu received a rude shock. A fearful visitation overtook her. Rumblings from the bowels of the earth, followed by earthquakes and volcanic outbursts, shook up the southern parts of the land of Mu. Along the southern shores of the continent, great cataclysmic waves from the ocean rolled in over the land, and many a fair city went down to destruction. The volcanoes belched out their fire, smoke and lava. The country being flat, the lava did not run but piled up, forming cones which subsequently became igneous rocks and are to be seen today on some of the southern islands. Eventually the volcanic workings ceased, the volcanoes died out and have ever since remained silent. After the cessation of these volcanic rocks, the people of the land of Mu gradually overcame their fright. And this is a picture of it here, apparently. The destruction of Mu. Temples and palaces came crashing to the ground. The ruined cities were rebuilt and trade and commerce were resumed. Many generations after this visitation, and when the phenomena had become past history, Mu again became the victim of earthquakes. The whole continent heaved and rolled like the ocean's waves. The land trembled and shook like the leaves of a tree in a storm. Temples and palaces came crashing to the ground, and monuments and statues were overturned. The cities became heaps of ruins. As the land rose and fell, quivered and shook, the fires of the underneath burst forth, piercing the clouds in roaring flames 3 miles in diameter. There they were met by lightning shafts which filled the heavens. A thick black pall of smoke overshadowed the land. Huge cataclysmic waves rolled in over the shores and extended themselves over the plains. Cities and all things living went down to destruction before them. Agonizing cries of the multitude filled the air. The people sought refuge in their temples and citadels, only to be driven out by fire and smoke. And the women and the men in their shining garments and precious stones cried, "Mu, save us." So they're praying to the island to save them. As the setting sun showed himself on the horizon, beneath the pall of smoke that overhung the whole land, he was like a ball of fire, red and angry looking. When he had sunk below the horizon, darkness intense prevailed, relieved only by lightning flashes. So it must be the sun, right? Mu the sun, maybe? Go back. Okay, some king, Ramu. Yes, people had to stick to the king and add the prefix Ra to his name. He then became the heretical head and emperor under the name Ramu. The empire received the name Empire of the Sun. All followed the same religion, a worship of the deity through symbols. All believed in the immortality of the soul, which soul eventually returned to the great source from which it came. Their reverence for the deity was so great that they never spoke his name, and in prayer and supplication always addressed him through a symbol. Ra the sun was used as a collective symbol for all his attributes. A high priest, Ramu, was representative of the deity in religious teachings. It was thoroughly taught and understood that Ramu was not to be worshipped, as he was only representative. At this time, the people of Mu were highly civilized and enlightened. There was no savagery on the face of the earth, nor had there ever been, for all the peoples on earth were children of Mu and were under the suzerainty of the Motherland. It's quite interesting. Okay, if this is all fiction, it's a hell of a great story. This guy had a great imagination, right? Okay, so if you're liking it so far, sound like the cats are fighting. Click click on the like button, subscribe to us, add your comments below this video, get back to you on those as soon as we can, and then go share this video with all your family, friends and others. A possibility of a civilization before any other, but as we read in the first part of it, possibly total fiction. The people later critiqued it, said, oh, this guy, pseudoscience, he's making it all up, etc, etc.